Michael Moore is here. He's actually sitting right beside me. For the magic of television, you can't see him, unless Sterling pops into a two-shot at the moment, which is okay if he does. And Michael Moore is here because he correctly predicted what was going to happen in our last election, and I did not. And so that is why, with 4 days to go, just 4 days to go, 3 campaign days until our next election, 3 days of campaigning left, Michael Moore will be our first guest here tonight. But first, a real president, a person of intelligence, wisdom, compassion, sound judgment, and dignity, went to Florida and Georgia today to campaign for Democratic candidates for governor.
The real reason I came down to Miami, because this Tuesday might be the most important election of our lifetimes. Politicians will always say that, but this time it's actually true. The stakes really are that high.
The stakes are so high that lifelong Republicans are endorsing Democrats tonight. John Warner is 91 years old. Now, when I worked in the United States Senate for some of Senator Warner's 30 years as a loyal Republican senator, he was always one of the pleasant, decent people who I used to disagree with most of the time in the Senate. Those people were called Republicans. Our differences were never personal, always just about policy. John Warner was good friends with Senator Mitch McConnell in those days. And tonight, former Republican Senator John Warner is endorsing Democrats in the hope that his former Republican friend, Mitch McConnell, will lose control of the Senate. John Warner is endorsing Tim Kaine's reelection in his state of Virginia. He is also endorsing Democrats in House races in Virginia, including former CIA official Abigail Spanberger, who is running in Virginia's 7th congressional district against incumbent Republican Dave Brat. John Warner says Abigail Spanberger has really impressed him. Senator Warner was the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee and was a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator Warner told NBC News, "It goes beyond politics now. I'm a Republican. I'll finish a Republican as I cruise through my 91st year. But you've got to put the nation's interests and the state's interests ahead of politics. I just feel that the Democrats have got superior credentials to what is being offered." When asked about President Trump today, Senator Warner said he has no inner compass at all. President Obama got some Trump-supporting hecklers in his audience today, and unlike Donald Trump, President Obama handled the interruptions with grace and patience, no threats. He didn't say he wished he could punch them in the mouth. He didn't growl, "Get them out of here." But he did wonder why they're so angry.
The point is that cutting Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid to pay for tax cuts for folks like Rick Scott does not sound like fighting for a little guy to me. You somebody. Actually, I think that, hold on a second. There's an interesting observation I want to make. Why is it that, hold on. Why is it that the folks that won the last election are so mad all the time? Question. I mean, like when I won the presidency, at least my side felt pretty good. You know, I don't know why. It tells you something interesting. That even the folks who are in charge are still mad. Because they're getting ginned up to be mad.
Leading off our discussion now, Michael Moore, Academy Award-winning filmmaker, whose latest film is Fahrenheit 11-9. And you are our returning champion of election predictors. In fact, the only one who got it right on this program for the last time. So President Obama makes a really interesting point there about Donald Trump and about the Republicans who elected him. He's saying, why are they still mad? They have won, they got the power, and why are they still mad?
I've wondered the same thing. I've never seen a bigger bunch of sore winners.
Yeah.
It's like, what more do you want? I mean, you got the White House by losing the election. She got 3 million more votes. You got the keys to the Oval Office. What are you still so upset about? You know, it is amazing. I thought the Obama speech was incredible today.
And it's all about turnout. And so what they are trying to do is get those people to vote who usually don't vote in elections like this. It is quite a challenge, as New York Magazine revealed by interviewing some voters who do not intend to vote. They are registered voters, and these are younger voters. Aaron is 25 years old, and he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, where one of the most, I mean, it's hard to say one is more important than the other, but hugely important governor's race where the Democrats could win the governorship for the first time in as long as I can remember. And it's not just that, it would be America's first African-American woman. Listen to what Aaron, age 25 in Atlanta, says about voting, because I need you to talk to him. Okay. We got to get into. He says, I volunteered for Bernie Sanders. I went to many rallies. I was at the first presidential debate in Las Vegas. And when he folded, then immediately went and defended Hillary, a person who's been campaigning against him for 18 months. That just really killed it for me. I just have no respect for that. And he is a political science student. Okay. His last line is this. He says, so would I vote in the future? I don't know. If somebody came along that was exciting like that, yeah, probably. So can you talk to voters who don't think their candidates are exciting? Is there a reason to vote even if you don't find your candidate exciting?
The non-voters are the largest political party in the country. Trump got 63 million votes. Hillary got 66 million. Non-voters in the last election, over 100 million, and usually midterms, over 120 million. They're the largest political force. So what I would say to Aaron and other non-voters is, first of all, I understand why a lot of you don't vote. I understand why you think the system is corrupt. It is. I understand why you think the candidates sometimes just look like a bunch of old party hacks. They are. I understand why you're fed up, and especially where I come from in the Midwest, why you're so upset at how the system has failed you. But here's the good news. And can I just speak to Aaron directly? And
please do.
Aaron, you have more power than Lawrence or I or anyone else, because you belong to the largest political force in the country. All the non-voters out there, you need to understand, you hold the power over this election. You control it. You can show up on Tuesday and stick it to the man in a way nobody's ever been able to do it, because you, these non-voters, Lawrence, are going to control this election. Now, just imagine.
And Aaron lives in Georgia.
Yes, and in Georgia,
it makes a huge difference.
You can make huge history. And look, you got to understand, first of all, you read somebody who's young. We were young once. And they do get upset at how they think things should be a certain way.
Aaron's an idealist.
Yeah, but we don't want to lose those people. You don't want to lose young people and their idealism, and you want them to not like what seems to be hypocrisy and all that. You want them to call that out. You need to have a segment of the population that's calling out the old people nonstop. That's the job of young people. So that's what Aaron does. But on Tuesday, Aaron can actually make history in Georgia by electing the first black woman to serve as a governor, I believe, anywhere in the United States.
Yep.
And you can let them have it, because here's what Trump is so afraid of. He is so afraid of Tuesday now. I mean, he can't even speak right at the rally. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, where he said, I had this big momentum. You know, and
he was complaining that a mass murder at a synagogue broke his momentum.
And the man with the mail bombs in the white van. Those two broke his momentum, and now he's afraid he's going to lose. But here's what happens with a bully, and that's what Trump is. The bully, if you remember back in school, the bully the important job for the bully was to make sure everyone else was afraid of him. And when people stopped being afraid of the bully lost all his power. And Trump is very afraid that somehow he's going to lose this power on Tuesday. And so he's just going crazy now. The hordes are coming. The brown people from Central America are coming. They're coming. They've got rocks. They've got rocks in their hands. They're going to come here and commit crimes and rape your women and do. It's just, the man's out of control right now because he sees the writing on the wall. That doesn't mean, though, that he's going to lose. Because every time, as you pointed out when I sat here 2 years ago, and said, every time, you think he's going to lose, he wins. When you think Kavanaugh isn't going to make it on the Supreme Court, he's on the Supreme Court. So you have to really, everybody has to take him seriously.
Well, Donald Trump is depending on Aaron and voters like that in order to win. He can't win unless voters make the kinds of decisions that Aaron's describing. And by the way, one of the things about this article about these young people not voting that I really appreciated is they talk about the difficulty of registration. Some of them couldn't register. Right. Some of them missed deadlines, things like that. Right. We make it as difficult as possible for you to vote. Okay. And so you got to rise to that challenge.
Let me say this first of all to young people watching. And by the way, it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night. What are you doing watching a news show?
Let's leave that.
Get out there and have a life.
We're going to edit that.
Okay, all right.
It's live.
I'm just saying, though, if they are watching,
they're always watching. What else would they do?
If they have a problem on Tuesday, always say these words: "I want a provisional ballot." They have to give you a ballot. If they say you're not registered there, you're registered, it's the wrong precinct or whatever, ask for the provisional ballot. You can vote on Tuesday, and they'll sort it out later if it comes to that, if it's a close vote, if there's a lawsuit. You want to have your X on that ballot, so ask for the provisional ballot. But I want to say this, too, about the non-voters. It's not just young kids like Aaron. It's also a lot of single moms who've got 3 kids to feed, and they might have 2 jobs. And we make it so difficult. Most other Western democracies, Election Day is either a holiday or it's on the weekend or the boss has to give you time off to vote. We don't have that here. So a lot of people that end up not voting, it's simply because they can't vote. If they're sick, if they're disabled, if there's a whole bunch of reasons, we make it very hard, as you said.
Listen, I have a very smart lawyer relative in his mid-70s who hasn't changed his address in, 40 years, who got bumped off the voting rolls in Massachusetts, and then when he discovered it, it was too late to register. So we do everything we can to get in your way as a voter in this country, and it forces the voter to take on a real job.
And the reason why it's made hard is because those in power who are beholden to the rich, to the wealthy who control this country and who buy our politicians in our elections, the last thing that the top 1% want you to do is to show up and have your voice heard, because there's so many more of working people and poor people than there are rich people. So the more that they can make it hard for people to have their voice heard, the more they can continue the status quo. So to upset that status quo, you have to get out there. And I like most people watching your show are probably going to vote. So what I would say to them is, think tonight, who are the 5 people you know, friends or family, that are non-voters?
Is Aaron?
And if any relatives of Aaron are watching this,
25 years old in Atlanta, Aaron.
Yes. Yeah. Every Aaron in Atlanta now has a target. But seriously though, think of the 5 people you know that don't vote, and make it your mission is to get them to vote. You're going to take them to vote. You're going to have a party. You're going to take lunch off. You're going to do whatever. I mean, I've been encouraging people to take Election Day off if they can and volunteer to knock on doors, to make phone calls. It's one day of pay. It's hard on people to do that, but I can't think of a more important day to sacrifice for your country than this Tuesday. And this weekend, there's a website called thelastweekend.org. Go to that right now during the commercial break. Not right now. Don't take your eyes off this show.
They can use the keyboard.
Oh, they can do that at the same time now. Okay.
They're multitaskers.
Thelastweekend.org, and it will show you what you can do in your zip code, in your area, tomorrow and Sunday. You can be involved. So there's many things people can do, but you're right. The non-voters hold the power.
They control the outcome.
You own America on Tuesday if you're a non-voter. Get out and vote. Get out and vote and show how powerful this is.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.